Is Fantasy Life I good for learning Japanese with? Fantasy Life I has full furigana on almost everything. As far as the first 10 hours of gameplay, it has 100% push to continue, meaning you can take all of the text at your own pace. So all of the cutscenes, just like Dragon Quest XI, they will actually wait for you to press the button to continue, so the cutscenes will kind of pause mid-motion. This makes this game one of the very few games that actually does this. There unfortunately isn't really any Japanese voice acting. There was like only 1 or 2 lines in the whole first 10 hours. But there is actually a chat log, so you can go in the menu anytime and have a look at all the previous dialogue. Fantasy Life I is kind of a combination between Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and even kind of Dragon Quest Builders 2 Zelda-ish with a combat system. This game has a whole bunch of different jobs or classes that you can switch from, and each different class that you can switch between, or as the game refers to them, lives, it changes the way you play the game, whether how you fight things, with a sword and a shield, or a double-hander, or even with ranged magic, how you gather items, you can switch between the different classes like when you mine, fish, or even farm, and also switching between how you make things, whether it's a blacksmith or an alchemist. This class system actually makes it a really interesting game for Japanese language learners. Because if you think about it, it's really just different ways of playing the game, just like Animal Crossing, right? Where you can gather different things and craft different things. But because this class system is actually tied in with the story, you get a whole bunch of dialogue with all of the different classes that you play, all of the different quests that you have related to the classes, and you can actually help fellow kind of villagers and people around the town who have certain different problems. But in order to help them, you need to switch to that class, and so there's all this dialogue involved to actually kind of keep reinforcing the language over and over again, making this game, in my opinion, a lot better than Animal Crossing for reading practice, as Animal Crossing is mostly just a lot of polite speech with the main villagers, and then a whole bunch of short conversational dialogue with all the different villagers. But in this game, there is a whole ton of variety. This game could very well be someone's ideal first fantasy game, or even first game to play in Japanese, period. The thing I really like about this game from a Japanese language learner's perspective is most games either lean too much into the heavy dialogue, think like a Final Fantasy or a traditional RPG, where you might have just hours of non-stop dialogue with very little gameplay, or leaning completely in the other direction where there's too much gameplay and very little dialogue. Like for example, Breath of the Wild is mostly just gameplay. But Fantasy Life I manages to find a perfect spot in the middle. The game does have an overall story narrative that you can follow along, but it's not too heavy, and it's also not too important to the overall gameplay, so if you wanted, you don't necessarily have to pay as much attention as you would, for example, some big cinematic game. You're not really going to be missing out too much because the actual gameplay itself is the real star. And the really great thing about this game is that because it has so much dialogue that's actually connected to the gameplay, through conversations with the villagers, quests that you have, so many quests and text to read, all with furigana making it very, very accessible, but it's also very, very optional. So you could just pretty much play the game if you didn't feel like studying Japanese, you could just play and have fun. You can easily sink hundreds of hours into this game, easily. Or you could read everything that you come across, but the overall story and dialogue is definitely interesting enough to actually read and enjoy, with a lot of interesting characters and different contexts to read about, making this have a really enjoyable balance. It's never too overwhelming with Japanese text, because you can always skip the text if you're not too invested, but it's not front-loaded with a whole bunch of text. There's a heap of dialogue throughout the entire experience. Every class that you can switch to has so much dialogue that you can enjoy, whether it actually be the class quests themselves, or the quests or challenges that you can do in order to actually level up your class. I think it's great that this game has so much dialogue connected to the actual gameplay, as a few too many games just kind of only focus on the gameplay without giving you any dialogue. So from a Japanese language learner's perspective, this is a pretty interesting game. Another kind of good thing about this game is because the gameplay itself is quite addictive, you kind of find yourself always getting distracted, like, oh, I gotta do this, and oh, let's do this, and then you see something, and it's almost like Skyrim where you're always getting distracted following something, and it just keeps you hooked and keeps you playing. This is really good from a language learning perspective because it keeps you interested. The situation changes all the time, so you're never too bored. You get a lot of stimulation in the variety of gameplay and dialogue. So the gameplay itself is really good for a Japanese language learner, it's very accessible, but how is the language itself? So what I've done is the first 10 hours of gameplay, I've actually OCR'd all of the text, and I've analyzed every single little bit so we can see the exact level of both the vocabulary as well as the kanji. So here's my spreadsheet where I've analyzed all of the data from the videos that I've actually made on different games. So all of the vocab episodes are all here, and everything has been analyzed so we can see the exact JLPT breakdown of all of the language, both the vocabulary and the kanji. And so here we can see exactly how much of, for example, the N5 vocab the game has. So like here with Fantasy Life I, 30% of the game's text is N5, 18% of the kanji is N5, 12% is N4 with 20% of the kanji, 16% is N3 with 35% of the kanji. That's interesting. So there's a big jump in the level of kanji, a lot of N3 kanji, 5% of N2 vocab with 14% kanji, 7% of the dialogue is N1 level with 11% of the kanji being used N1. And then around about 29% of all the vocab is non-JLPT vocab. So here's all the exact numbers that we came across so we can see in the first 10 hours of gameplay how much we came across, even how much of the JLPT N5, for example, is covered in the 10 hours. So in the first 10 hours of gameplay, almost 40% of the N5 is covered for vocab. 34% of the N4 is covered, 27% of the N3 is covered, and 8% of the N2 and 8% of the N1 is also covered. So just playing the first 10 hours, you'll come across a third of the N5, N4, and N3. Then having a look at how much of the N5 kanji is covered. So of all of the N5 kanji, 87% is covered in the first 10 hours, 87% of both the N5 and N4 is covered in the first 10 hours, 80% of the N3 is covered. So as you can see, N5, N4, N3, all very essential, with 50% of the N2 kanji being covered and 21% of the N1 being covered. And so in the first 10 hours, 1,000 unique kanji appear. And so if we average out with a weighted score, all of the vocab that is in the first 10 hours and all of the kanji, this game is around about mid N4 to high N4 vocab and about low N3 to mid N3 kanji. So if we were to compare Fantasy Life I's vocab with all of the other games that I've covered on the channel, we can see at the very top we have Final Fantasy VII Remake being the easiest vocab. And then if we scroll down here, we can see Fantasy Life I. So it's a little bit easier than Persona 5, it's easier than Meta 4, Metal Gear Solid 2, and you can see that at the bottom we have really difficult ones like Breath of the Wild and Berserk, with Nier Automata here as well. So in terms of all of the vocab episodes, it is definitely mid to upper in terms of difficulty. And for overall kanji, the very easiest is Like a Dragon Gaiden. And if we go down to the very bottom, oh, it's close to the most difficult, with Nier Automata being the most difficult with Rise of the Ronin and Breath of the Wild. So as you can see, a lot of really difficult vocab or here difficult kanji games. But Fantasy Life I is just a little bit easier than those. So the overall language that is actually covered is actually quite high level. And so the final combined score of both the vocab and the kanji puts it at about high N4 to low N3. And again, if we compare that to all of the games that I've covered, yeah, it's just a little bit higher than middle range. Definitely not in the difficult tier. These orange ones here are definitely a bit more challenging language, but not in the super easy tier either. And the reason for this is because a lot of the vocab you're going to be coming across is all fantasy speech. Really good for getting into fantasy games. If you want to play any kind of JRPG, this is a really good intro game because it's going to cover so much of the language you're going to see all over the place. If you want to check out the spreadsheet yourself, I'll put a link in the description. So overall, Fantasy Life I is a fantastic game for Japanese language learners, especially if you're wanting to get yourself used to the fantasy genre and play some other games in Japanese. Because not only does it cover kind of everyday language, you also have all of the language to do with magic, fighting, kings and kingdoms and monsters, even elemental affinity like lightning attacks and fire attacks, all with furigana making it incredibly accessible, but also because it's also an Animal Crossing game at the same time where you can actually build your own island, terraform, and decorate your own house. You get exposed to a whole bunch of language in that direction as well. A very easy game to sink in hundreds of hours in. And the fact that it's completely pushed to continue and has furigana makes it incredible for a Japanese language learner, and so I would put this as an A+. Unfortunately, there's no voice acting, but because the game is completely pushed to continue with furigana, and even a bonus log, and then the overall experience itself is very, very accessible. You can pick and choose exactly when you want to study and when you just want to play. Makes this a fantastic first game, even though it's a little bit more on the difficult end, it's just so accessible. That being said though, if you wanted a game with much easier vocab, something like Final Fantasy VIII, Shin-Chan, or even Pokemon would do. Oh, and just for a PSA, it takes about 30 minutes to get into the gameplay. So if you feel like the intro is taking a really long time for you to get through, just know that everything begins around 30 minutes when you can actually choose what class you want to play, and from then on it just keeps expanding more and more as you continue the story and level up your classes. It's a really big game. Just look at this map. You have this map to explore, and then this map, and then even this map. So if that's Fantasy Life I, what do you guys think? Do you think this might be a game you might be interested in checking out yourself in Japanese? If you'd like me to make a vocab episode, let me know down in the comments down below. It is a little bit of a tricky one to make a vocab episode on because the intro is like 30 minutes and it doesn't really show the actual gameplay. And because the real key thing about this game is the actual variety of gameplay and all of the dialogue that you just happen to come across as you do a task here and then do a task there and then play a little bit of that class, then do a little bit of that. It's a bit difficult to make a clear narrative for a vocab episode. Maybe I could try a more let's play style or something? Let me know in the comments down below. From now on, I'm going to try and include these language analysis in all of the videos that I do, at least the ones that cover specific games, as I feel like this is a really great way to show you the exact level and target that you want to be when you're wanting to play games in Japanese. So thanks so much guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to help support the channel and also join the Game Gengo Discord community, you can do that either directly through the Game Gengo website or through Patreon. So not only do you get to help support the channel, but you can even get help with your Japanese. You can ask questions about Japanese any time of the day and get help. You can vote on upcoming videos and even sometimes hang out in streams and chat. So if that's something that interests you, then feel free to join as a member. So thanks so much again for watching, and as always, I'll see you again in the next video. See you guys.